In 1959, Robert A. Heinlein published a short story by the name of All You Zombies, a time travel noir involving an increasingly shortening cast list. By this, I don't mean characters die off or leave the story, but the 5 characters we focus on are revealed one by one to actually be the same person at different parts of their own history. This is complicated further by the fact that 2 are women, 2 are men, and 1 is a man who refers to himself as a mother and makes a living pretending to be one. They also bang themselves, set themselves up with themselves, kidnap themselves, and give birth to themselves. It's very meta and symbolized by the Ouroboros, a snake that eats its own tail. It's a self-serving loop. The way that this all works is that the characters intersex, being born with full sets of ovarian, vaginal, and phallic testicular genitalia. Now, if you ask most contemporary audiences, most will either deny the existence of intersex people or cast them as disabled weirdos. The standard practice when someone is born intersex is still genital mutilation, leaving them with a scarred, non-functioning set of genitals that resembles what people expect genitals look like. And don't even get me started on non-binary people. Which begs the question, what the fuck is with these intersex characters in my mid-20th century science fiction? To which I respond, you don't understand intersex people or trans people or Heinlein very much, do you? For example, Gender 1, Ishtar. Let's start at the beginning. A very good place to start. To the beginning, I mean the beginning. When you think of ancient civilizations, ancient Greece probably comes to mind. Now, Ishtar, the goddess we will soon be looking at in this myth, is quite possibly the basis for Aphrodite after she spread out with her cult along trade routes, sometime between the age of Mycenaean Greece and what we commonly refer to as ancient Greece. So yeah, she's pretty old. Mesopotamian old. Ishtar, or Inanna as the myth is sometimes portrayed, was a Mesopotamian goddess dealing with sex, fertility, and being the queen of heaven. And for some reason, whether to get back her dead husband, who maybe isn't dead, or to expand her empire, she popped down to the underworld, varies by telling. But she was cunning about it. She set up a backup plan with her handmaiden and got into full drag. I'm talking, she got into her 7 May. Royal garments that included a necklace, a crown, earrings, a bra, a dress, a bracelet, and a lapis ruler measuring stick thing. She topped it all off with a wig and some makeup. The meh are a symbol of her powers, so keep that in mind. That's going to be important later. So, she goes to the gates of the underworld and is all like, "Gatekeeper, let me in!" To which he is super skeptical, so he goes to his boss, Ishtar's sister, Ereshkigal, Queen of the Dead, and she is not happy to hear about her sister's visit. Probably because she's super territorial, and she thinks she's going to come to conquer her realm, because apparently that's a thing that she does. She demands that all 7 gates of the underworld be opened one by one, taking one of Ishtar's 7 Meh as she passes through. When Ishtar finally arrives at Ereshkigal's throne room, she's naked and stripped of her powers. Ereshkigal stands, and Ishtar steps toward her, maybe to give her a hug, maybe to claim her throne. The 7 judges of the underworld don't take time to, get into the messy details and just unleash 60 diseases upon her, turning her into a corpse and hanging her on a hook. Now, this is one of those mythologies where, if the goddess of something is incapacitated, that thing kind of stops happening for a while. So everyone stopped banging, and that was kind of bad. Her handmaiden, having not seen her in 3 days, goes to the gods and begs for help. The first 2 are like, no, she knew what she was getting into. This is her own fault. I'm not helping her. But the third one, Anki, digs the dirt out from under his nails and creates a sexist creature, Asu-Shinamir, whom he sends to get Ishtar back. Ereshkigal is smitten with how nice and sexy Asu-Shinamir is, and tries to give them lots of worldly possessions, but they insist on one thing. They either ask for the water of life and splash it on Ishtar's corpse, or they brought the water with them from Anki and asked for the corpse, then splash it with the life juice. Either way, Ishtar is arrived, and they bolt for the door. However, the Gala and Ereshkigal are not happy. The Gala warn Ishtar that no one leaves the underworld unmarked, meaning someone must take her place. She decides on her husband in certain tellings of the myth, because apparently he was not at all fazed by the fact that she died. Dick! In other stories where she goes down to get her husband, he just kind of stays there, and sometimes she gets a Persephone type thing going up where he switches places with his sister every 6 months, and that's why we have winter. Anyway, Ereshkigal focuses on Shinamir, cursing them and their kind, non-binary intersex people, to forever be outcasts of society to eat the waste from gutters. Thanks, girl. Thanks a lot. Now, this is an interesting myth, particularly by today's standards. Asu-Shinamir is explicitly sexless or intersex, as well as gender non-binary. And given the time frame for when the myth was first told, when mammoths walked the earth, this gives a solid baseline that people of non-binary sex or gender have existed since the dawn of civilization. This is codified by the existence of seemingly gender-fluid Egyptian gods, the intersex Greek god Hermaphroditus, and 2 Greek transgender characters, Iphis and Kines. While these myths do focus on supernatural beings, it is safe to assume that these views on gender and sex are at least somewhat held by the respective culture at large, especially since that's kind of what myths are supposed to do. Gender 2. Mutilation. Over the years, the world got progressively more and more Christian and less fun, and ideas of non-binary sex and gender structures faded into obscurity, being replaced with a rigid binary structure. But people were still being born intersex, because that's how things work. And, by the way, I will not be arguing for the existence of intersex people here. This essay is focused on the usage of intersex and transgender characters in media, specifically all you zombies, and not actual intersex people. However, for context, intersex people do exist, even being researched medically as early as 1937 in Hugh Hampton Young's Genital Abnormalities, Hermaphroditism, and Related Adrenal Diseases. There is simply no denying that intersex people exist, and even though they are about 1.7% of all births, that's still 119 million people. That's about as common as being ginger, and despite the whole soulless thing, we're not claiming being ginger is wrong or unnatural or taking away their rights or dyeing their hair black when they're born. So, there's my rant about whether intersex people are deserving of being treated like people. They are, because... Alright, so here's where we start going a little bit off script, because during editing I realized that this wasn't really focusing on the literary aspects of intersex people, and I was just ranting about intersex people for a bit more. So, by the time that this story was published, intersex genital mutilation had been a thing, and it was an elective thing that you could do when you were an adult, if you just wanted your genitals to not look, quote-unquote, weird. Which I guess would help you in the sexual marketplace or whatever. Now, it wouldn't become commonplace to do this on babies when they were born until the 1970s. However, this surgery was available, and it was somewhat commonplace to do it. So it's not unreasonable that a doctor would know how to do it. However, it's also not unreasonable that this surgery would not have been done when our main character was born, and they would not have grown up knowing that they were intersex. Very few people ever do grow up intersex, even if they had the surgery. It's only when they become puberty and they realize that they're a bit not developing as one is expected to. Now, having an intersex or gender sexual mixture character is very interesting in literature because it allows you to do some weird things. For instance, in most sci-fi space opera, planet-hopping television shows, you will often find a singular sex species who exhibit various different ways of being masculine, being feminine. And we will talk about this a little bit more during the transgender and non-binary section of this video. It just gives you a lot of room to wiggle and make a descriptive statement on the way that we work. Now, I don't believe that this is the only intention that the author had with the character of Jane, and we will get into that when we get more into the story later on. A note on terminology here. The term hermaphrodite is nowadays considered to be outdated, antiquated, and a borderline slur. It implies that a person has fully functioning ovarian vaginal reproductive system and a fully functioning phallic testicular reproductive system. Or if you aren't trying to not be... If you're not actively trying to avoid using these antiquated terms, fully male and fully female is the traditional terminology for hermaphrodite once it was stopped being used to apply to all intersex people. It is a very, 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 very low chance that anybody could ever be born a true hermaphrodite. However, our main character is a true hermaphrodite, and they are also trans. Transgender 3. Alright, time to get into the acid trip that is gender. I've referenced back in Gender 1 that gender used to be a lot more open back in the day. We had women becoming men, people who were neither or both, gods who are female but have dicks, gods who are sometimes men, sometimes women, etc. Now, when the sexes got slapped with a binary, they were also tied with the newly binary gender system. But that's not how this works either. Not only is sex non-binary, but gender is also non-binary. And that's when I started ranting about transgender people again. God damn it, Wanda, stay on topic. So, like I referenced back in the second segment, the second segment, you have a lot of liberties that you can take when you have an intersex or person or somebody that doesn't fit into what we define as male or female. Now, you can also do this a lot with non-binary and transgender characters. You can have again, with a space opera, you could have people that don't fit our standards of male or female. For instance, in The Left Hand of Darkness, Ursula Le Guin's character, Genly, describes that that he has trouble identifying the people on the planet that he's visiting as either male or female because they're not. He has to do this weird, bait and switch game of, seeing them masculine and seeing them feminine, and it just doesn't work. This is a very deliberate way of showing that this person doesn't fit our standards of gender. Transgender and non-binary people can also be used to illustrate that our way of seeing gender is flawed. Maybe not necessarily seeing that it isn't binary, but the author could also be making a statement that men don't always fit masculine gender roles and female don't always fit feminine gender roles in a very antiquated way. However, we don't have that many transgender or non-binary characters in today's media that aren't just being these people exist, we should treat them right. Gender 4, the unmarried mother. The character Jane in the story is a standout amongst other characters being written at that time, and even today they'd be accused of being a token or snowflake pandering. So, what are they doing? The story that Heinlein presents is impossible to tell without Jane being intersex. There's no way of conveying a person as a self-contained time loop without that person being physically capable of impregnating themselves. In the human species, this necessitates an intersex person. So, that replaces the question of why is Jane intersex with why did Heinlein write a story involving an intersex character? At the end of the story, we get a sentimental moment with Jane, who expresses that he does still go by Jane. He goes, "The snake that eats its own tail, forever and ever. I know where I came from, but where did all you zombies come from?" In this line, Jane likens himself to the Ouroboros, and he is directly responsible for his own existence. Jane is the ultimate paradox. He also claims to have an innate knowledge of himself, one that arises from his situation. He is to bear a first-hand knowledge of his origins, having orchestrated and taken place in it. Transgender people are not lost on Heinlein. Heinlein references several popular transgender people in the story, namely Christine Jorgensen. It is not that far of a stretch to infer that Heinlein could be making a commentary on transgender and intersex conditions. Heinlein could very well be implying that trans people know themselves on a level unattainable to cisgender people, as cisgender people have never had to search themselves and find out how they serve their treat, which is a reference to a part of the video that I cut out. Basically, cisgender people have never had to really ask themselves, am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I something else? Society, why do you hate me? Similar is the experience of finding out you're intersex. This isn't a soul-searching experience, but more your doctor telling you that you will never have properly functioning genitalia because the doctor who delivered you didn't like how they looked. This can come as a very large shock, especially if you were hoping to have children of your own. Unlike Jane, who didn't experience mutilation at birth, intersex people are unable to engage in reproduction. Their genitals do not work in the way necessary to bear children or inseminate someone who will, in turn, bear the children, in most cases, and this is very much degraded if you did experience mutilation at birth, as mutilated genitals are very unlikely to be able to work as genitals. Both of these experiences can come with the realization you will live your life like Osashanamir, especially intersex and non-binary people. We live in a world where people deny the existence of non-binary genders and sexes, and where forms either don't have an option for everyone or they get attacked for pandering. I don't think this is fair, as 1, non-binary people exist, and 2, they've existed a lot longer than you might think. See Gender 1 if you're lost. Heinlein isn't shy to progressive ideas either. His stories feature several prominent female characters, people of color, and in the novel The Moon is Harsh Mistress, we are introduced to a gender-fluid computer. Yes, really. And the Star Beast, the brutish monstrous creature referred to as Lummox, is a masculine coded until, psych! Not only is she a she, she's the empress of her species. Complete reversal of gender roles. This was at a time when Hollywood movies couldn't feature a queer character without them getting their comeuppance. They had to be punished in some way. Rowan Ellis has a very informative video about this that I will link below. So, there is a lot to question here. Heinlein is very much trying to push a progressive agenda. This story is very much about how the character of Jane is very in tune and knowing of themselves because they have been very or instrumental in their own creation and their own life. And I think that is very telling of the transgender experience and the intersex experience. Gender 5. Jane. Jane is someone who knows themselves in a way only they can. And all the zombies don't. We'll just go along mindlessly accepting this view of gender and sex that society teaches us, despite very public counter-evidence against it. We have lost the way that Jane sees. Some of us are heading towards that light, and from here on that path to my fellow zombies, I miss you dreadfully. Thanks for watching this convoluted mess of an essay. I am still getting used to this format, and hopefully my future essays will be a bit better. I think my next essay is going to be on Disney's recently revealed plans to not include Song of the South on their new streaming platform, and why this is or isn't important. This video is, in a way, brought to you by Skillshare. Not in a they gave me money to say this kind of way, but in a I learned how to make this video on Skillshare kind of way. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can watch tons of videos on how to do lots of things from computer science to animation to music to editing to writing to business. It's got a lot of things on there, okay? If you use the link down below, you get 2 free months of Skillshare, and I get a month free. It's no commitment, and like I said, they didn't pay me to say this. They literally give this link to everyone that signs up. When you sign up, you will likely get a similar link. So feel free to share it with your friends. This video is also brought to you by the House of Dittmer. We recently released our newest collection, the Spring Collection of 2019, the Young Tinkers Collection. It's full of a bunch of designs for the little tinkers, not the little tinkers at heart, but the little tinkers in size and age, you know? Get something for the kids. The link is down below. Make sure to follow me on all my social media, and like, favorite, subscribe, and comment, and hit the bell, even though it doesn't really work. So, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.